Today's a difficult day. Welcome back to my series about Either Or by Soren Kierkegaard. I think it's the greatest book ever written. We're talking about two sections, crop rotations and The Seducer's Diary. I want a lover, I don't have to love. I want a ghost just out to give a fuck. Now, The Seducer's Diary is wildly popular, probably notorious, infamous. It often is published on its own outside of Either Or, which I think defeats the purpose, personally. Personally, that's kind of fucking weird, but it's a massively influential text. It's one of the most famous pieces that Kierkegaard ever wrote, and I found it just so fucking disturbing. Okay, yeah, crop rotations. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's about how boredom is the secret villain of the ethical life. It's the secret villain that moves us all toward the aesthetic and what causes the aesthetic man to do dastardly, dirty things. Boredom itself is almost always the culprit. And along with despair, well, boredom could lead to despair, and despair is the ultimate author of suicide. So boredom certainly has a hand in that pen, has a hand writing suicide itself upon most of the faces of the aesthetic. Crop rotations is great. The Seducer's Diary, I just finished reading it. Man, I should say that this is a reread, but I haven't read it in well over a decade. So I just finished rereading The Seducer's Diary, and I think it's one of the most disturbing things I've ever read. I think it's one of the most disturbing things I've ever read. The Seducer's Diary greedily chronicles the absolute dehumanization, demystification, deflowering, and defiling of a young girl named Cordelia. The seducer systematically breaks her down until she becomes, in her own words, his slave, damned and doomed, punished for simply existing. He makes a toy out of her. He makes her lower than his pet. And while doing so, since this is his diary, we are inside of his worldview. And in his worldview, he romanticizes her so easily. He romanticizes every moment so beautifully. He makes a ballet out of his seduction. He makes a ballet out of it. The tone is cold, intelligent. It's somehow both cold and deeply impassioned, because the seducer often allows himself to get carried away, swept up with his own drama, with his own narrative creations, with his own scheme, with his own seduction, because that's where the life of the aesthetic truly is. It's so disturbing to me because if I just paid attention when I was reading Kierkegaard all those years ago, I wouldn't have been so psychologically and spiritually fucking sick for so long. I've had conversations multiple times with confidants, with friends at the bar, talking about women, talking about life in general, where I say something along the lines of, I I survived for so long in this way because I treat everything like it's a cartoon. I treat everything as if it were only half real, half make believe. I treat everything like it was a cartoon, every person like they were a fucking cartoon character or some embarrassing mascot for a dead brand. I treat everything as if it were basically nothing, or a sandbox full of narratives, full of women to hit on, full of drugs to take, full of ways to almost die ways to cheat death. Like that's how I that's how I kept operating for so long. That's how I kept getting worse and worse, more psychologically and spiritually sick, with the biggest smile on my face, grinning from ear to ear. That's how I managed. And it was deeply aesthetic. It was the void of the aesthetic. That's what the Seducer's Diary revealed to me more than anything, especially on this read through, through the erotic stages where we're analyzing Mozart's operas, from shadow graphs, all throughout A's writings. We're kind of always distancing the emotion from the passion from the subject from the writer. Every time that A is able to talk just all encompassingly, seemingly, about love and eroticism and philosophy, he can only do so through fictional characters, through characters upon a stage or through pieces of music that he's heard. That's the only way that he's truly able to capture what he deems to be most necessary, the passions and emotions that he deems most necessary to life itself. The life itself's most vital ingredients can only be understood to the aesthetic through fictional representations of those vital ingredients. And that was me, man. I spent so long, uh, analyzing film, television, music, books, so long doing that I'd get wrapped up in the characters. And I would distance myself from my own real life. Like I had more emotional investment in Pedro Almodovar or Wong Kar-wai films than I did in my own life. I was able to look at cinema, for instance, as truly representative, as the ultimate representation upon representation upon representations. I was able to view cinema as the ultimate expression of life itself. And there's such a great distance there. Whereas if I were to have looked at my own life in that time period, it would seem less real than the art. The art would seem more real than my actual life. So I had distanced that. And if you add distance upon distance upon distance, just like Kierkegaard would say, in The Sickness Unto Death, that the soul is relational to all of the relations relating to each other, relating to themselves, like representations upon representations. The more distance, the more relational that my life got to relation itself, the more removed I was from the experience of life. Whereas I can live so intimately within the art that I was analyzing, and that added a new psychopathy to my lived experience that I had to deal with for a very long time. I would treat romance not to the same severity, nihilistic, aesthetic severity as The Seducer and The Seducer's Diary, or as A in general, but like pretty damn close, I would say. I could mythologize a woman very easily. And in that same moment, I could fantasize about deicide philosophically. Like I could do so many things in my mind when I would think about women, think about love, think about passions, think about emotions, think about like the meaning of life. It was all informed by distance itself, which is the ultimate void of the aesthetic. My life was dominated by an aesthetic void for so long, and if I had just paid attention to fucking Kierkegaard over 10 years ago, I wouldn't have gone down this nihilistic path that stemmed from existentialist philosophers who did not do enough to shield me from nihilism itself. Like they didn't do enough. Kierkegaard is moving mountains here, I swear to God. So when you're reading The Seducer's Diary, I find it such a when you're reading The Seducer's Diary, I think you will find it very, very disturbing, especially when reading it in our modern age, right? Depending on how pessimistic you are, you might say, well, this is basically what dating life has become. These are the rules of attraction, so to speak. And I do sense a bit of Bret Easton Ellis here, that the Sean Bateman pathology and psychopathy is alive and present within The Seducer's Diary. I wonder if Bret Easton Ellis ever read The Seducer's Diary, what he thinks of Kierkegaard, because basically The Seducer's Diary, it makes the rules of attraction look like a punk bitch. It really does. And I love this book. I think this is Bret's best book. Um, The Seducer's Diary, on the other hand, is 10 times more disturbing because Kierkegaard, well, not only is a 10 times greater thinker than Bret Easton Ellis, let's take Bret off the table. I just wanted to draw that parallel for funsies. Kierkegaard gets so into the worldview, so into the POV, into the philosophy of the seducer, and it was tapping into certain ways that I would look at like certain women, right, and look at or try to devise ways to I suppose seduce her. That's such like a strong word. Devise ways to hit on her or to make her think I was something larger than myself, and I could do that by making her larger than herself, right? There's so many parts in here that I think are deeply moving when the seducer talks about how it's a whole other thing entirely. Like his main goal is to not simply like poeticize the girl, but poeticize himself within the girl, make poetry of himself from the girl's sculpture that he's making inside of her. Like there's, like that's fabulous because this isn't just a like seduction of eroticism. That's simply a part of it. Kierkegaard's showing me that aesthetic seduction in our ultra modern world still is at its heart, at its black heart, it's about dehumanization. It's about feminine demystification. Well, it's about the process of deification and then demystification. That's why I brought up like I related to that a little bit, like by deifying certain women and like making of them statues in your mind, making of them divine relics in your mind, and then going on to like by seducing that you perform a certain deicide on that concept in your brain. So over and over again, you are erotically, sensually, intimately committing a seductress deicide over and over again. And over time, that becomes a genocide of all the female gods, of all the divine feminine that kind of make up part of your soul, which can in turn make you so spiritually sick that you find it insufferable. I think that that's like just so disturbing to me. Maybe because I really got into that mindset. I used to be a part of that mindset. Like I'm trying to be careful here in the sense that I was never a player or anything. I've seen people try to liken the seducer's diary to like who used to be called pickup artists a decade ago, or I guess looks maxers now. I have no idea, but they try to align the seducer's diary with every new trend. I would just align the seducer's diary with the aesthetic worldview, which the aesthetic worldview has been the dominant worldview at least since Kierkegaard's age, and it still is now. But I don't want to be confused with anyone who was who made a competition out of sleeping with women. I'm definitely have made games out of it, but that wasn't like my only exclusive form of nihilistic recreation. I made everything into a cartoon, into a joke, into a TV show, into something fake yet fully realized by myself. Like I did that a lot, but I'm not. I was never a player or anything, but I have definitely been guilty of the seducer's worldview in the seducer's diary, which makes me feel attacked in a way that's way more invasive than I felt throughout the rest of reading this book. Throughout the earlier parts, I felt like the seducer was invading upon me. I felt like the seducer was assaulting me in a couple different ways while I was reading his diary. And then you realize that it's less of a fever and more of a mirror. I I hated the seducer because I understood him so much. Kierkegaard makes it easy to understand the seducer deeply, which is what is one of the pieces like most lastingly disturbing effects. The way that Kierkegaard used this as the ultimate example, or to truly drive home the point, because he's driven it home before. He's made his case against the aesthetic lifestyle, ironically through morbid irony, right? Through morbid humor, and excellent insight throughout the books and letters of A, the sections with the aesthetic. He's done that over and over again, but just to really drive it home and knock it out of a park, the park, and to like knock this point into the stratosphere, The Seducer's Diary really nails everything that's wrong with the aesthetic worldview, everything that's wrong with the aesthetic lived experience. And it comes down to that distance. It comes down to how dehumanizing it is. And why is it like the aesthetic kind of knows what he's doing is wrong, but he sees himself as a tragedian almost, or as a great romantic poet or romantic hero of the ancients. He sees himself in this kind of delusional place of grandeur. He certainly sees himself that way, and goes on to dehumanize Cordelia, which is such a beautiful name. Goes on to dehumanize Cordelia. I fell in love with Cordelia while reading this and realized that I was also a part of the problem, obviously. But but why doesn't, okay, what I'm trying to say here, it's second nature for the aesthetic to dehumanize the object of his affections, the object of the representation of his affections. It's easy for him to dehumanize Cordelia because he himself has dehumanized himself. He is the walking epitome of dehumanization. He's the walking definition of dehumanization. He is so distanced from actual human connection, from the actual shared experience of the human condition. He's so distanced from that. He's alien to it. He's been alienated from it. He's dehumanized. He is terrified. Like the aesthetic void is losing your humanity. So dehumanization is so easy for him to perform because, according to his worldview, the human experience itself is ruled by dehumanization. And when you have concepts like romance, feelings like pathos, existing within a world of aesthetic dehumanization, then those kind of take on terrifying properties. And in the aesthetic worldview, then romance and eroticism and love, fidelity truly can only be appreciated on a stage as a representation of a real thing, as opposed to the texture of the real experience. So then we can truly understand the aesthetic. He is dehumanized entirely. The most value that he sees anywhere is in art forms. And he takes like what he learned from analyzing and studying the art form and applies that to his actual life. Like if you take the spectacle and apply that to the society, then you've dehumanized the society and therefore dehumanized yourself. Like it's so fascinating because Kierkegaard is even saying here that as an audience member, even as a reader of either or, perhaps, it's a dehumanizing experience to seek the meaning of life on a stage, in the written word, anywhere other than the lived experience. And I think that is something Kierkegaard would definitely say. Kierkegaard would say, you can only be saved by true faith within the absurd, in the insane, which you grasp by total belief. Like that's what Kierkegaard would say. Like total experience, total absurd, totally absurd. In The Seducer's Diary, he is doing so much, putting an exclamation point really on every single section of this first half of either or. Every single section, a massive exclamation point that's shaped like a dagger or like a stake directed directly at the aesthetic's heart. And me being an ex-aesthetic, yeah, I definitely felt pulverized, impaled by certain parts of The Seducer's Diary. The whole thing, like the tone completely shocked me. So fucking scary, bro. Like it's a fascinating work. It's a fascinating work. To tie this into crop rotations, which is the other part that I read for this video, part 3 of my either or analysis. Boredom definitely seems to be the watchword. Boredom certainly seems to be what the seducer is so terrified of experiencing. then he'd be left with nothing, no stimuli, just the void, just the aesthetics void. The seducer here is truly terrified of actual human commitment. He prefers, okay, he prefers to be a detached spectator of life. And that really strikes to the core of what I've been saying in this entire video. That I think that the aesthetic life, the ultra modern world, is so alienating that it dehumanizes almost all of us, making us feel more comfortable as detached spectators of life. But then we treat the other players in the human experience as archetypes, as characters, as playthings, as toys, as opportunities to have our heroes moments or lovers quarrels or like our big theatrical operatic cinematic moments, and we use them to achieve those things. And sometimes it's mutual, sometimes you're both using each other to attain a sort of aesthetic enlightenment, which of course is only temporary and crescendos as does the climax of any sort of opera, play, or film. The ultramodern world has made us all less than human. The aesthetic life has made us all less than, other than human. The Seducer's Diary fucked me up. I thought it was, yeah, brilliant. So dark, so twisted, and so disturbing. And such a brilliant way, such a powerful way to close the first half of Either Or, to close the aesthetic worldview of Either Or, because now we're going to go to Judge Wilhelm and be analyzing, interacting with, engaging with the ethical life. And my God, The Seducer's Diary, it makes you feel existentially nauseous, specifically of the aesthetic worldview. There's no possible way to read The Seducer's Diary and not want to never be able to see yourself in that worldview, in that narrative, in that POV. I want nothing to fucking do with the seducer, man. I want to save Cordelia, protect Cordelia from that fucking vulture, from that vampire. I want to save Cordelia and protect her, shield her from him, knowing that a large part of him is me. And that partly why I'd be shielding her is to kind of try to win her good favor, like it's already happening. The aesthetic worldview is nearly inescapable, especially when we start to speak theoretically in narrative terms, because then we've created a sort of detachment, a distance from what matters most. And what matters most ultimately is the ethical. And to me, what matters even more than that, and to Kierkegaard as well, is the religious, is God. So let's forget about Cordelia, forget about the seducer. What we need to take away from the seducer's diary is, in God, all things are possible. In God, there's no room for the seducer, nor for his diary. Holy fucking hell, man. Wow. Wow. Yeah, did I mention this is this is clearly the best book ever written? Ever written by anyone? Hot damn, Kierkegaard, you fucking rule, man. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, or like I've been saying, my Either Or videos are definitely turning into little personal psychodramas, right? These are kind of impromptu therapy sessions. I'm learning so much about myself here in confrontational ways, but in revealing ways. And I think in ways that benefit me so fucking much. Like, I'm unbelievably finding this such a rewarding experience. Like, I'm so happy with Either Or. And if you've been watching this series, I hope that you've been able to relate to me a lot, honestly. I hope to not be as alone as I normally feel. I hope you feel just as strongly about about some of these sections as I do. And I hope maybe if you had been or are still living within the aesthetic worldview, that you consider changing, because it's so dark and it's so scary, man. It's the seducer's diary. It's dark and it's scary and it's full of poetry that gives me nightmares, dude. Like, stop it. Fucking get out of it, man. Please. Please, your fucking soul depends on it. Her soul depends on it, right? Please. I just hope you've been enjoying these videos. And yeah, I feel very intensely about either or. It's a hypersensitive kind of experience for me. And the rewards are infinite. I feel like I'm changing entirely, completely, and absolutely. And that's incredible to me. Thank you for watching. This has been Bipolar Book Club, the series about either or, manic depressive. Bye for now.